Good evening, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear my voice. Again, a very warm welcome to tonight's event, our ChinaTalk webinar, The Changing Landscape of China's Entertainment Industry, presented by the China Development Society. I am Angia and the president of China Development Society. And today we're very honored to have two wonderful speakers and wonderful moderator here today with us. Before we start, I would like to first make an acknowledgement of country and also a very brief introduction of the Society and our future events. Alrighty, I'll just go ahead. We acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners of the land on which we live, meet, learn and work, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. It is upon their ancestral lands never ceded that University of Sydney is built. As we share our knowledge, teaching and research practices within this university, may we also pay respect to the knowledge embedded forever within the Aboriginal custodianship of country. So more about China Development Society. We are a not-for-profit student society that is entirely run and independently organized by students. We hope to inspire peers to integrate into the campus through our activities and events. Apart from China Talks, we also have cultural events, as well as our voluntary teaching program and mentorship program. And here are some photos of our past events. In terms of our academic events, the two main streams are our China Development Forum, held annually, a prestigious conference, which serves as a large platform for students, academics, and professionals to engage in the exchange of ideas and discussions about key issues surrounding China. And here are some previous panelists from our 2019 CDF. And the other stream, of course, is our China Talk events, like this one, you are here today. It's open to all students for free, and we discuss topical issues surrounding China, such as the phenomenons recently in the entertainment industry. And here are some of our previous speakers as well. Our next event will be on the 21st of October, and I'll just briefly introduce it in case you are interested. You can scan the QR code here to register for this event on the topic of China and rules-based international order. We will explain further information at the end of this event as well. And also our upcoming events is the art exhibition E. It is entirely organized by members of our society, so entirely run by students, and it features 14 emerging student artists. And after Sydney opens on the 11th, hopefully, the exhibition will be held in the Fisher Library, as well as two other locations on campus at the university. So more than welcome to come to the exhibition, and it's for free as well. And lastly, our upcoming program is the voluntary teaching program at the end of this year. We will be partnering up with several schools in the rural areas of China and sending university students as volunteers to those schools to help with the education of the children down there. We also have an online version of the program, so don't worry if you're not in China at the moment, or you're at any other part of the world. You can still participate in the program, and more information, of course, can be found on the CDS social media channels. So now, without further ado, let me introduce the background to our event today. The Chinese government has banned social media platforms from publishing celebrity popularity rankings. And there are also a series of regulatory changes, as listed here, to the entertainment industry in China. And so the increasingly lucrative market in celebrity merchandise has become the government's latest target in its crusade to crack down on businesses. This has had wide-ranging impacts on the industry and the future landscape of the entertainment field. So the theme today is the changing landscape of China's entertainment industry. We will be starting from the new phenomena that has emerged in the last few years, including boys' love, effeminate stars and fandom, etc. And we will discuss how society and government respond to these emerging trends, and also the trajectory of future developments. We are absolutely honored to have two amazing speakers. Firstly, Ms. Yun Jiang from ANU School of Regulations and Global Governance. She produces China Neican, the newsletter, as well as she is also the managing editor of ANU's blog, China Story. She has been a policy advisor in the Australian government, having worked in the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet Treasury and the Department of Defense. So looking forward to her views on this topic. Also, we have Dr. Graham Smith, who hosts the Little Red podcast. He is also a research fellow at the College of Asia and the Pacific at the Australian National University, and also a visiting fellow at Sun Yat-sen University's Centre for Oceanic Studies. His research focuses on local politics in rural China, China's engagement with the Pacific, and the geopolitics of search engines. So a very warm welcome. We are also delighted to have Dr. Jennifer Su, who is a research fellow in the Public Opinion and Foreign Policy program, particularly the subject areas concerned with China. She is now working on a project which explores the intersections of Australia's multiculturalism and foreign policy. Prior to that, she was a policy analyst with China Matters. So again, thanks for coming to this event. We are very honored to have all of you here. And just before the event starts, we are not into Q&A time right now, but I will just give some simple instructions for Q&A for the best efficiency of the session. As most of you may know, Zoom has a raising hand function, and we would like everyone who has a question to raise their hands before opening your mic, so that we know who's first and who's next. Otherwise, if you don't want to speak out, you can also type in the chat box and post your question there, and Jennifer will be facilitating the Q&A session. So great, I will now hand over to Jennifer and we will start our event.
Great, thanks so much, Anja, for the introduction. And as Anja has mentioned, she set up a context for why we're exploring this topic. But, you know, I think let's start off with the big thing, the deplatforming of superstar Zhou Wei, the fining of Zheng Shuang for some $47 million for tax evasion. So online celebrity fan clubs, celebrities themselves, they are not immune to crackdown, as we've seen. So what's behind these actions? Is it a case of too many celebrities getting too popular, too hot, hotter than the CCP? So these are sort of the things that we're going to explore tonight, and we welcome your questions and thoughts on these. So I'm going to kick off by posing a few broad questions for Yun and Graham to think about. So let's start off, and this is open to both. Why is the Chinese party state taking celebrities and celebrity culture to task? Have these celebrities crossed a line of some sort? If so, what is this line? Do we know, Yun or Graham? Do you guys want to kind of go broad and then sort of go in a little deeper?
I'll let Yun kick off, I think.
Just kick me the football.
Defer to the policy expert.
Oh, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on anything. I'm merely a fan of things, but not a crazy fan, not a fan that the government probably wants to crack down on.
So you're not going to buy 70 products, you know, of the same thing.
I don't buy any products.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, question is, so what's happening? What's it all about? Well, you know, celebrities in China, like celebrities elsewhere, are constantly under the spotlight. Their actions, and that including their so-called moral behaviors, are constantly getting scrutinized, right? So the recent example of this moral behavior that has become the gossip of the internet was a famous singer's ex-girlfriend, who then revealed that she was badly treated and used by the singer, and then they broke up. Now, this to me sounds like a pretty normal story of a couple getting broken up. But then on the internet, it became all these things about morality, how celebrities are behaving badly. They break up with their partner right after they become famous and all that. And then another recent example is a top-ranking celebrity. Now celebrity ranking is abolished, as we have seen, but before it was abolished, Zhang Zhehan was a top-ranking one because he's starting a very popular boy love drama, Word of Honor, Shan Heling. But that was very popular earlier this year. But he was blacklisted because it emerged that he has visited Yasukuni Shrine, which, as you know, will be very offensive to a lot of people in China. So in general, I guess people are interested in how celebrities behave, what they're like, their personalities. So their behavior and actions can be influential. And from that, then the problematic behaviors are seen as possibly a corrupting influence on, especially on the youth of today. So that's a moral side. But on top of that, they're also rich. So they're more prone to get scrutinized for financial crimes by the government as well. And we know that, Zhao Wei is a recent example, and before that, Fan Bingbing, I think. So they often get in trouble for things like tax evasion or keeping two sets of books. I think in Chinese, what they call it, yin yang books. And then beside moral and financial crimes aspect, the celebrities are fans. So there's a fan culture, a fan club, a fandom. They're often seen as acting irrationally in their pursuit for chasing celebrities. And some of this includes things like buying all the products endorsed by a celebrity and then competing with other fans to see who spends the most on the endorsed products. This can lead to wastage. There's stories of people like buying too much milk and then they throw it out, things like that. And even more outrageous stories, including it's a very old story now that a fan's father actually committed suicide because she was so much into chasing idols. Another problem behavior includes fans getting into online war with fans of rival celebrities, so basically flame wars. So to the Chinese government, to the Chinese Communist Party, culture should serve a high purpose. Culture is not something that should be, consumer driven. It should serve a high purpose, such as what in China called core socialist values. And celebrities should be a guiding force for other people. They should be a role model rather than simply as individual celebrities. And from party's perspective, well, party has always been paternalistic, right? In their perspective, they must guide people in their morals and in their actions. And their values are deeply conservative, actually quite equivalent to what we would think of as the Christian right. So things like quite against same-sex love, gender diversity, sexuality diversity, and things like that. And they are quite encouraging of traditional gender roles, for example. So now with all that, what the Chinese government is doing is basically targeting what it perceives as deviant or degenerate art or morals. So these things include celebrity worship, but also anything that deviate from what is called mainstream values, basically anything that it disapproves of. So from that sense, then things like people with gender and sexual minorities are often targeted, and things like that. I think I've been talking so much, so I will stop here.
So I'm just going to turn to Graham now. So what Yun has described is there's an intersection of stardom, popular culture, money, and all these sort of cross-morality lines. Is it simply a case of a moral line has been crossed that the party disapproves of, or is there something more beyond morals, Graham?
Look, we've got a lot of old-fashioned campaign style things going on now, which is why I guess a lot of people see similarities between Mao and Xi Jinping, because a lot of these campaigns target people, it seems, fairly randomly. So you have a guy like Chris Wu taken down, but I'm sure if you really dug into it, you'd find 10, if not 100 other Chris Wus doing the same things, grooming fans, that sort of thing. So the line that you're talking about, I think, is a really interesting question. I think you actually answered the question without saying it directly, the line is core socialist values. And it's something we didn't take seriously at first. So when it first popped up, it was all these sort of cheesy posters, you know, of you know, almost meaningless words, like including democracy, for example, patriotism and so forth. But it seems that these things are actually being worked into law and are actually becoming part of the fabric of governance. And so having treated them as kind of a joke, maybe we need to start taking them quite seriously, because they are what's behind this campaign, whether it's the Salhe campaign, the Wipe Away Black, whether it's the anti-pornography campaign that started up this year. All of these are sort of underpinned by the philosophy of core socialist values, which are, like a lot of party speak, pretty ambiguous.
Yeah. So, Yoon, I just want to go back to a little bit about sort of the specifics of these government intervention. You've written about this. Here is where algorithms come in. So what do algorithms have anything to do with fan culture, celebrities, and celebrity culture? Can you talk us through a little bit about these specific government interventions?
Yeah, so algorithm has an interesting intersection with a celebrity fan culture. So as I was saying before, what the government wants is, you know, mainstream values, things that actually actively transmit positive energy. And in the draft regulation released by the Chinese government on algorithm regulations, it has some quite positive things. I actually have to give a credit that it has some positive things, like, for example, users should be able to opt out of personalization, algorithmic personalization. So actually, I should step back a little bit to talk about what is algorithmic personalization. I guess personally, I'm not a user of TikTok, but I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with TikTok. So basically, you know, an app that tracks what you like, and then recommending things based on your past likes and your experiences within the app. That's basically what algorithm recommendation is. And the government is regulating that. I mean, even in Australia and in other countries, there are concerns about, you know, taking personal data and stuff like that. So that is one aspect of the algorithmic recommendation, which is quite positive in that sense. But the other aspect is that the draft regulation also stipulates that the platforms, so things like TikTok or in China, Douyin, they should orient towards mainstream values and actually transmit positive energy. So in that sense, they give the platforms a responsibility, a burden to promote positive influence. And that possibly includes things like, you know, positive celebrities, while guiding users away from celebrities or cultures that behave badly. Again, that could potentially mean less visibility for LGBT people as well, because we know that from the government's perspective, LGBT culture and people and behaviors are what they think is not in the mainstream values. So basically what the government is saying is that despite all the censorship so far already, we already know that, you know, the government has already done a lot of censorship, but it still thinks that arts is too guided by capitalism and consumer demand, and it wants more control over the arts.
So, so turning, sort of thinking about these mainstream socialist values that Graham has mentioned and you have mentioned, Graham, this isn't the first time that we've seen parts of the entertainment industry targeted, as you've written and have done a podcast on Boys Love the Untamed, the megastar Shao Zhan has also come under the ire and the discipline of the party state. Now, Graham, you have a couple of clips you want to show us to get us into that headspace.
I think in the interest of time, I'll just show you the juicy one. You know, I don't want to share sound. I don't want to have the entire session devoted to Xiao Zhan. Or Hui Wuxian, as he's known.
难忘机，韩光君，你特别好，我喜欢你。或者换个说法，心悦，爱你，想要你，没法离开你，想一辈子都和你一起夜练，想天天和你在一起。
Oh my gosh, I have to say, it is so sappy, Graham. Is this the reason why they were targeted? Because of the sappiness?
If only.
So, yeah, talk us through why. Is it the genre that was targeted, or was it the specific style, or both? Yeah, are there parallels that we can draw between today's Crackdown and that of a little bit earlier?
Xiao Zhan's fallen. It's not really a fall. Xiao Zhan's still around and he's still doing just fine. But his fall from grace in March of last year didn't have all that much to do with the party state, but it did have a lot to do with fan culture and this really interesting and kind of accidental interaction between fan culture in the sort of mainstream space and a subculture of fan fiction. So what happened was, you see there in the drama, Xiao Zhan's character is a boy love drama, but in the fan fiction world, which is this thing that goes on online platforms, people would use these characters to write other scenarios or other dramas, either based closely on what happens in the Untamed or in a completely different world. And one of these completely different worlds that an author created was just a bit too much for some of the fans of the Untamed to take. And that involved Xiao Zhan becoming a transvestite prostitute who was seducing Wang Yibo, his rather stiff male co-star, who was, I think, a sort of a teenage boy at school. And so the fans of the show were or some of the fans were so outraged by this, they alerted the authorities and said, look at this disgusting stuff on this website. You should take this website down. Now, the website was based in the States, so they couldn't do that, but they blocked it in China. And that led to this other subsection of the community, which is the people who were on the AO3 platform, basically rising up in sort of freedom of speech and attacking Xiao Zhan, who of course hadn't caused any of this to happen. He just, happened to have been in the soap opera. He didn't tell his fans to go and do this. And so you had this all-out war between the fan fiction people and the fans of the actor. So yeah, a complicated downfall, but it's sort of one of his responses to it, I think, was really, really telling. He himself started, and his lawyers got together a big thing to rehabilitate him, involving going after these sort of anti-fans or toxic fan culture. So that's a big part of his profile these days, is to sort of try and change online culture.
Do you think?
I would just add that I believe the government is looking to crack down on boy love drama or dame, I guess, or what's called dame adaptation dramas. So, for example, I think in one of their gaming regulation, they're talking about how they want to discourage the portrayal of same-sex love. Now, already because of adaptation drama, so that particular drama, Chen Qingling, in the original novel, they are in love, but in the TV show, they're shown as just really, really good friend. And that's the usual portrayal, how they portray in TV shows, includes, Shan Heling, Zheng Huan, the other two pretty big boy love dramas. But even that's, I think, too much for the authority right now, with the cracking down on, effeminate men, or men not behaving manly enough. So they're actually cracking down. I believe they are looking to cracking down a lot more on boy love drama. And that's a really bad news for one of the TV shows I was actually waiting for, Immortality, Hao Yixing. That they have finished filming like last year, and people kept saying, oh, it's going to start online, it's going to start showing, but it never come out and looks like it'll never actually make it. So it's a really bad news for people who have invested in those kind of dramas already. They put in the effort, the actors already finished filming it, everything's done, but then when it comes to censor, the censor can just completely scrap the whole thing.
So, I mean, the party state obviously is very selective in its reading of history, of Chinese history. I mean, gender, sexuality have always been quite fluid in, you know, the long 5,000 years of Chinese history. And it's been depicted in art form in various dynasties as well, where, you know, that fluidity is not necessarily so stipulated as is today. So how does the party state square that, you know, the fluidity of gender and sexuality in China's history?
Look, they're a strange bunch of old men, if you're talking about the party. So the party is very much still male-dominated. And if you look at the party's own history, there's certainly whispers that many senior party figures, Zhou Enlai for one, Li Peng for another, you know, weren't, shall we say, averse to the cut sleeve. But, you know, that's nothing that will ever come out in official party history, of course. It's just scuttlebutt, you know, spread around by people like me. But yeah, they do have this tremendously moralistic streak. And combining that with it being such a male-dominated organization, I mean, women, you know, when they're listed in things still appear as brackets, you know, oh, that's a woman, how about that? It's really, you know, I kind of do wonder about the similarities between the CCP and the Catholic Church, and the difficulty that, you know, they even have comprehending the appeal of, say, boys' love, you know, which is insanely popular and worth, you know, vast amounts of money, and you know, at the end of the day, harmless. Like, really, who is hurt by these dramas? Like, you know, what danger does this really present to the moral fibre of the nation that they would bother to ban these fluffy, entertaining things that, you know, it's keeping people off the streets, you know? They're certainly, it doesn't make you a bad person to watch these dramas, quite the opposite. And the relationships portrayed in them, yes, they're written by women for women, are quite beautiful and chaste, really, if you're going to say anything about the male-to-male relationships. All sex that is in there is very much, and if there is heterosexual sex, then that's always a bit weird. But certainly the male-male relationships are, you know, in many ways, idealized relationships that could have a positive effect on society, this positive energy that Yun was talking about.
So,
I would just add that to me, I'm thinking like the Chinese Communist Party conception of, you know, traditional culture is quite similar to what a lot of, you know, alternative alt-right government or extreme right-wing government, when they say traditional culture, they think, you know, in traditional culture, everything is heteronormative, everyone's heterosexual. But we all know that's not true. In, you know, traditional cultures, well, in ancient Rome, ancient Greece, there are a lot of diversity there. And that's similar to Chinese cultures. In ancient Chinese cultures, there are a lot of diversity. But with those conservative social values, they just turn a blind eye into this. But I also want to make a point that although boy love adaptation dramas are very chaste, the original novels are not chaste at all. In fact, if you read them, they're a bit like erotica, I would say.
I call them impractical erotica because they're written by women for women, and they're often so far away from what's practically possible for a gay man. It's kind of, you know, don't try this at home, kids.
Yeah. So you have both mentioned fan culture and the sort of the sprawling rowdiness of this online fan culture. Do you see fan culture as part of China's civil society? Is it a segment of the broader civil society? And if so, what does Chinese civil society lose from such government actions or, you know, targeting of boy love genre and, you know, the culture that goes around it?
I'm not really the expert on civil societies, but I think it is part of civil society because we know that there are certain groups on certain forums, they actually have mobilized for a specific cause, for example, feminist causes. So in that sense, I believe they are part of the civil society.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's just, and yeah, there's no question that aspects of fan culture that you outlined at the start there are pretty toxic. You know, it's kind of silly, people going out and buying a whole bunch of stuff they don't need and, you know, pouring milk down the sink or whatever it might be. But, you know, by clamping down on these things like he does here, like one cut of the knife, then you're reducing the diversity of your own society, and you're reducing, you know, the things you can dream about, if you want to borrow the China dream metaphor. It seems to be becoming increasingly about what you can't dream about rather than what you can.
So is this a part of the wider efforts to sort of homogenize? Can we use that word, to homogenize Chinese society and culture?
Yun, do you think so?
Yes, I do believe so, although it's a bit hard to really see that it's not really a consistent trend, because, you know, things, cultural rectification is basically a cultural rectification campaign, right? And that has been going on since Yan'an rectification times, basically, and has always been a case that arts serve the party. Consumer demand is supposed to always be subsumed to socialism. And when the two conflicts, socialist values must prevail over market values. So that has always been the case, but it's about whether the government is now even more strengthening such control. And I think that appears to be the case. But of course, it's not as, you know, back in the Mao days, it's still not as bad as that. When I remember, well, I don't remember because I wasn't born then. But I remember when my dad tells me that, you know, things like Deng Lijun, which is a favorite of the people from my dad's generation now, but her songs used to be bad. Her songs used to be seen as Mimi Jing, which is like, oh, the songs to corrupt your influence. Basically, when you hear the song, you lose your revolutionary spirit, and you no longer want to do revolution. Anyway, at least it's not as bad as that. But from CCP's perspective, yeah, culture serves socialism.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the difficulties is in this homogenization is the party's been looking out for ages for things to kind of sell China's soft power abroad. You know, look at K-pop, the success of that elsewhere, and they finally have something like that in the shape of Boys Love Dramas. I mean, these are insanely popular in Thailand, just nuts. You know, the crew went there for a visit to Bangkok and it was sold out. You know, this is what they've been trying to get. Finally, they get it and they're like, oh yeah, but not like that. We'd like it to be more like, you know, Chow Yun-fat playing Confucius. And of course, when Chow Yun-fat plays Confucius, no one wants to watch it because it's not funny or interesting or have any dramatic value at all. So, you know, it's a difficulty. The more they homogenize, the less appeal they have.
So
yeah,
does that
I was
mean
completely surprised as well when one of my friends who is not from a Chinese background and did not study Chinese or anything like that, and they told me they watched Untamed. I'm like, wow, really?
Yeah.
So does that mean once the CCP gets a hand on these cultural things, items, they suck all the fun out of soft power? I mean, so what if you were to propose, what are some soft power alternatives today that might be a little bit more sanitized? What might they be, and what might, you know, grab the attention and the imagination of the global audience? If not Untamed or Boy Love genre, what might they be?
I mean, you can kind of see it in the way these dramas are packaged for television. I mean, they're already pretty thoroughly sanitized, as Yun was saying, compared to the books. And the way they get past the censors, of course, is they just lay on the Chinese traditional culture with a shovel, you know, martial arts, hoo-ha, you know, flying everything, you know, mysterious Chinese medicine, It's all in there. But the difficulty is they've got all these elements, but the BL is sort of the glue that puts them together in an attractive package. So, you know, I don't know. I'm not an advisor to the Chinese government these days. That they stopped listening to me in about 2008. What would you suggest?
Well, certainly, I think when we look at the experience of Korean cultures, it really took off the power of its self-culture really took off after it relaxed its restrictive censorship. So before, I can't remember the date. So Korea, used to be an authoritarian country, and its arts and cultures were very much censored as well. But then it loses soft power. And in China's case, I think, so much, some people say, Asian people are not creative. That's just rubbish. Asian people are creative as other people. But the problem in China is so much creative energy is being used on how to get things past censors, basically. So a lot of it is lost on actually producing good works. And I think that's a great shame, and that's a great shame for soft power in China as well.
Final question before we open it up to the floor. So for those who want to type in their questions, do so in the chat function or raise your hands. But I'm just interested in knowing whether you think these government intervention is more about wanting to take control or seek control back of the market. The entertainment industry is so lucrative, and in some ways it's gone out of the hands of the party state. And so is this an attempt to regain control, dictate, these lines, these parameters, so that the state has a greater share in the revenues that come through in the future?
I don't think it's necessarily about getting more profit from the industry. I think control is one aspect of it. Fan cultures do also have a potential for mobilization. And we know that the Chinese Communist Party does not like things that has potential for mobilization. But that is one part of it. But the other part is that sense of paternalism. It wants to guide morality, and it believes that it is the enforcer of a morality of people in China. And people must be guided by the party. They can't be trusted to do the right things themselves. So I think probably that has more to do with it.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. And in the case of the entertainment industry, definitely so. When you're looking at other aspects, say, for example, the Ant Group, financial risk, things like that, then definitely there is an element of them looking at someone like Jack Ma and thinking, gosh, he really is getting too powerful. He is really getting to the point where he can say things about the state banks in public. We really need to cut him down. But I think in the case of the entertainment sector, it is mostly a cultural rectification. I think Ewan's use there of language is dead on. Questions? Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Anyone first off the rank? Or put your hands up if you have questions. So we've got, do you think there is a boundary between danmei and queer literature?
Great question. Really, really question. Really, really good question. And this is one of the really, really, really fascinating things about danmei is that it's not queer literature. So as I said, it's literature written by women for women, where the main characters are male and the women are kind of written out, which gives a freedom, if you like, to the genre. Because to be frank, in a lot of writing, the women characters are incidental or sort of almost plot markers, like, tragic thing happens to a woman here and the hero moves on. Whereas if you just have two male characters, you can explore a relationship in a lot more depth. But it's not queer literature. It allows sexualities and the fluidity of sexuality to be explored, I think, in a really, really interesting way, and a way that can be quite liberating. But it can also, be reinforcing quite stereotypical tropes. It's just that one's a man, one's a more feminized man, having a very chaste and almost traditional relationship in there. But it's such a diverse soup, if you like, the BL literature, that some of it does definitely head towards the queer end of things. But I'd say on the whole, it doesn't experience, the fairly tough reality of being queer in China these days, or being queer anywhere, to be honest. Even in Australia, I I'm not gay, but because I was small and effeminate, I was picked out as being gay at school. So, you know, it's a pretty tough life, and the glamour of the BL literature doesn't really mesh with the sort of grim reality of actually growing up. You know, I was going to do the whole alphabet there, but growing up queer.
LGBTIQ+.
No, I always lose the plus and feel bad about it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, right? That Dame, I think it has a Japanese root, and the women that into Dame literature are called rotten women. It is written by women and for women. Pretty much all the big BL dramas adapt from Dame novels that are written by women, and all the relationship are, in a sense, idealized. It's not realistic portrayal of same-sex relationship. And there's also a saying that you rather, basically, there's two roles. There are two very rigid roles, even though they are kind of a bit outside the normal gender norm. They're still very rigid roles played by people in the characters. So for example, there's one character that's more feminized and one character that's masculine, and they can't switch roles. In Dame literature. So it is, so there is still a very sense of a constraint in Dame literature, unfortunately. Of course, there are probably right now Dame authors that will try to change that, but that's the main thing that's going on.
So we have the next question. Do you see any potential that the crackdown on these celebrities may trigger any protests from fans, and how might the government respond to such protest?
I am doubtful that it will trigger a protest. The Chinese government is quite good at preventing protests in general. I mean, you know, there's monitoring and surveillance on the internet, and usually with this kind of protest, it will be organized online. And also, yes, there are a lot of fans that are kind of crazy, in my opinion, but I don't think they are that crazy that they will go protest against the government, because protesting against the government is a big deal in China after all. And also, if they are young, then there's also a lot of parental pressure and supervision as well.
Next question. How has the crackdown impacted investment in the entertainment industry, both for domestic content and localization / importation from offshore? Interesting.
That is interesting.
Mm.
I have very little idea. Yun, because it's the crackdowns, it's almost too early to say, because it's really happened this year. You can imagine that it's not going to have a great effect on people wanting to invest in the industry when share prices are, you know, dropping by 50% in the case of some companies. Although that might be the time to invest once all the water's gone out of the company. I mean, it is really interesting. I mean, to look at another aspect of it, the games industry, you know, it's a massive industry in China. I mean, you have over 600 million gamers that are, you know, active online gamers, and these new regulations coming through to restrict people to, you know, 3 hours a week is a huge impact on the industry. And if you had sunk your money into that area, you'd be tearing your hair out, thinking, gosh, you know, because no one particularly saw this. I mean, I think people saw it coming, but not something quite that drastic.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how it would impact on investment side, but certainly for producers that are looking to produce the next show, they have to consider the current guidance, the current regulation, the trend, where the regulation is going. So I would expect, for example, there would be less boy-love dramas being produced, and there'll be more patriotic dramas being produced.
Not not what the world needs. But I mean, this is the thing though, because you know, if you'd asked me earlier in the year, I'd say, oh, no way can they crack down on boy love, because it's just so lucrative. You know, it's just insanely popular. And like you say, there was a production line of things waiting to come through, like things people were looking forward to. And I'm actually really curious, like, will that the one you were talking about, the Immortal, how's it been translated?
Immortality.
Immortality, that's right. Yeah. How is that, you know, could that find a release outside? Like, could Netflix just take it on straight off?
I was thinking that as well, actually.
Why don't they just go around? Because, you know.
But the market will be too small outside, I think.
You think? I don't think so. I think, you know, if it gets to Japan and Korea and, you know, Thailand, everywhere else, there's a lot of people watching.
Yeah, we've got.
I mean, if there comes a choice between no release at all and releasing outside, I'm guessing it's better to take some profit than no profit. But then I'm not sure if the government would allow that. I don't think that has been a case. Well, some movies are released outside China, but not inside China. That's true. Yeah. But haven't really. I can't think of a TV drama that has done that. No,
because it's such an excruciating waste of money, and you know, from all accounts, it was going to be really good. So
and also for actors that basically bank their next role on it.
Yeah, not just their role, all the product into, like, all the skin products that they're going to be marketing. You know, I mean, and that's all I can mention. The skin of these guys, you know, it's just like, I've got a 20-month-old baby that his skin's not as nice as Xiao Zhan's.
It's just filter. It's all just camera filler.
Look, I can't believe that.
Before the polishing of the celebrity ranking chart, I was watching, like, pretty much top 10 male celebrities on the ranking chart. They all done boy love dramas.
Yes, absolutely.
So I just collect these questions together. So do you, first is, I guess, a bit more cultural question. Does the genre of anime mean that male characters have become the objects of gazing and are gazed at by the female consumer? So that's an interesting question. Anybody want to take that?
Oh, very happy to take that. And the boy love dramas, I think the latest in a line of gazed upon males. So when I used to do field work in Anhui, when that was a going thing, I would go to this restaurant that served, sort of fast food restaurant, and I struggled to get served because all of the waitresses were watching Korean dramas, filled with these beautiful men, you know, who they're never going to meet in real life. Like, you know, you look at the party secretary, you know, cigarette hanging out the mouth, the baijiu reeking of, you know, dirty clothes, and then they can walk away from that and see this beautiful man up on the screen. So yeah, BL's not the first time that men have been gazed on, and these Korean dramas really provide the template for characters like Xiao Zhan. This is not the first. This has been going on for decades. The gazed upon male,
which I think it's kind of a reversal of what normally expect in society. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting.
So we've got a couple more questions around this, and the first is, maybe I'll just take a few more questions before I'll hand it over to Anja. To what extent is the ban on BL TV show in connection with the current decrease in birth rates? The recent popular TV series Sons and Daughters of Charles Family seems to tell audience how wonderful it is to have siblings. So, I mean, going back to morality, desire, duty, is there any connection between this ban and wanting people to reproduce more?
Yeah. What do you reckon? I think there is. I mean, the census came out, 2020 census came out, and it would have just terrified them. So the numbers in there look quite healthy at the moment, but all the forward projections are deeply, deeply alarming. So just one figure I'll pick out, projected median age of a Chinese person in 2050, 56. That's old, okay? And it will compare to America in 2050, median age will be 44 because they have lots of migration. Now, how do we fix that? How do we get women to go forth and naturally reproduce, because we're not quite sure how to take on large-scale migration, where we're going to get the immigrants from, how we're going to deal with that. We have enough social cohesion problems. So yeah, anything that's distracting women from their role as childbearers, get it out. I don't know, that's probably too extreme, but what do you think, Yun?
I think there is an indirect connection, not a direct connection. The whole thing about enforcing gender norms is a big aspect of that is about fertility rate. It's basically saying, you know, women has this responsibility almost to have children, and they should do all the things that's expected of them, of their gender. Is a traditional, they should do a traditional gender role. So I think, so that's related to the whole fertility rate and then, like, you know, straight child policy, getting more people to have children. And then the dame drama is the other side also of the gender role equation, that the people in dame dramas are going a little bit outside their gender norms. So I think they are indirectly related to enforcing gender norms, but they're not directly related. I don't think people who watch dame dramas are less likely to have children.
But they're not having children, they're watching dame dramas.
Yeah, that's right. And that's where
I mean, and you have to binge watch it too. Like, you'd be completely too tired for anything else afterwards, you know, let alone forgetting that you're meant to find a woman.
So one last question to wrap it all up, and we've heard lots about common prosperity over the last month and a half. Is there anything to do with common prosperity, this entertainment industry, cultural rectification that's going on?
I think one aspect of it does. So the cultural rectification side probably has a little bit less to do with the common prosperity narrative. But the whole thing about, you know, ultra rich celebrity endorsement, this hyper capitalism, competitive, you know, fans competing for each other to spend more money on endorsed products. I think that side, yes, have something to do with common prosperity, about ensuring a bit more equal distribution, about less visible inequality.
Yeah, I think there's an indirect relationship. You know, you just have to look at who's the poster boy still, and it's Huawei. Huawei, a very rich company, but they're producing tech that the nation needs, versus, say, Tencent, that is making an extraordinary amount of money in a range of ways that the party doesn't deem particularly useful to society. So give us some of that money, Tencent, or put it towards something that's going to benefit the nation. So if there's an indirect link, yeah, I think.
We've gone a bit over time, and I know there's still a couple more questions, but I might just hand it back to Anja here and thank both Yung and Graham for a really fun discussion. I wish all Zoom panels were like this.
Too kind, Jennifer. Lovely to see you again too.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jennifer. Absolutely insightful and informative and extremely fun to watch as well. Yeah, I am actually a finance and law student, and I found so much integration between the social aspect of it, the financial aspect of it, and the regulations and the political aspect of it. So super amazing discussion. Thank you for coming again, and thanks to our audience. I guess I will just hand over to the director of our ChinaTalk department, Yi Yang, to say a few last things before we wrap up the event.
Oh, thank you, Anja. And yes, I'm the director of ChinaTalk, and I'd like to once again thank our honorable guests, Yung, Rain, Jennifer, for their remarkable contribution to this interesting topic. And I'd like to thank our audience for attending this ChinaTalk event tonight. I hope you all enjoyed it. And our next ChinaTalk event is on 21st of October, and we will be discussing China and the rule-based international order. We have assembled a prestigious lineup, including Professor Bates Gill, the head of the Department of Security Studies and Criminology at Macquarie University, Professor Kerry Brown, the director of Lao China Institute at King's College, Professor Chen Dingding, the founder of Indonesia Institute, and Ms. Beck Strating, executive director of La Trobe Asia, And if you're interested, please scan the QR code on the slide to register. And the next big event coming up from CDS is the art exhibition E, which combines Chinese and Western art culture through many forms of artistic mediums. The exhibition opens from 31st of October to 31st of December. And the event venue is located within UCIT campus. And you can find more information on our social media platforms. And lastly, our CDS yearly program of voluntary teaching, 野望支教, is a non-for-profit activity where we will be supporting a few Chinese schools in poor mountain areas by providing education and teaching power. And lastly, thank you everyone for coming and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sanja.
Thanks, Graham. It was fabulous, fantastic to hear. And the clip was great as well.
I thought people needed a bit of, a bit of atmosphere, a bit of
Yeah, I
atmos.
know. Hopefully we can reunite offline after Sydney opens up.
Oh, I'd love to come back to Sydney.
I know.
Yeah, lockdown in Canberra, 2 small kids. Yeah.
Oh, right. You're in Canberra as well. Yoon's in Canberra too.
Yep. No, we're here. We're here where it all started. All right. Thanks, guys.
See you.
And,
Thanks so
see
much
you.
for your time.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Keep in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.